Hold on. I just have to fact check one thing that I'm going to ask Steven about.
You don't want to do a live fact check?
Well,
like in Joe Rogan when you're like, hey
Andrew,
pull this up?
Actually, pull this up. Yeah.
And it's always like something really like basic, like who played in the Super Bowl last year?
Right, yeah, but that's the thing that they're like, we're going to spend 10 minutes making sure we get this right. But then they'll be like, so anyway, mRNA vaccines, what do you think? Hello, I'm Stephen Hale from the Nashville Banner, and I'm joined by Stephen Elliott to talk about the state of Metro. How are you doing?
I'm good. State of Metro, also good, I guess.
The state of Stevens is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us. I think you mentioned you had got some allergies going on. I'm feeling a little allergied as well this morning.
I need some tips on how you get your voice to perform under duress.
On the pod.
Yeah.
Well, you could talk to the mayor about that, about how he prepares for a long speech. So you attended the State of Metro yesterday.
That's right.
The State of Metro address, the mayor's annual speech about the State of Metro.
Mm-hmm. It's well named.
Yeah, it's right there in the title. Do you know how many State of Metros you've been to in your career?
That's a good question.
How many states of Metro?
I've been here for 10 years. I've probably been to like half of them since then.
I would have guessed more.
Maybe more. Yeah.
But I guess that makes sense because, you were kind of upper management there for a little bit. So you maybe were sending people out.
Yeah.
Can you name 3 musical performances that have happened at States of Metro?
Okay, I was about to
during
say
your time here.
I was about to say Jason Isbell, but I believe that was actually at Megan Barry's inauguration, not at a State of Metro.
I think you're right about that. Although, isn't the inauguration also like a meeting of the Metro government or something? Don't they do the same kind of thing? Like
I do think
they call this meeting to order sort of situation.
That might be right. Yeah, I think did the mariachi band that we wrote about at the Banner, did they perform one year?
I think that's right. There's been kind of a shift there. I feel like kind of end of Carl Dean into like going forward from there. There's like kind of a shift from kind of big name like musical guests to like, I think yesterday there was a high school marching band, right? Or
it was MLK high schools. I wouldn't call it a marching band. They were more orchestral.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, I think there's been some more of that. The one that sticks out in my mind is, and I was delaying our recording by trying to fact check this, is I want to say that Brad Paisley performed at one of these things.
I missed that one.
I'm going to feel silly if I'm wrong, but I think it was him because I distinctly remember, I want to say it was one of Carl Dean's. I'm just saying this all on the air and we'll look it up. But I want to say it was one of Carl Dean's final ones.
That, what would make more sense in that vein is Dierks Bentley, who was briefly on the Metro Nashville Airport Authority board.
And I have a similar kind of memory of that too. But I remember at this State of Metro speech, some event, and I remember making a joke about how Brad Paisley was there. Because, he seems like a great guy, but is Brad Paisley, it was big country guy, accidental racist songwriter. Sorry, I should clarify. I'm not saying he is a racist songwriter. He is one of the writers of the song Accidental Racist, if people remember that. 2013. Our producer, Andrea, is here fact-checking this. I'm really glad. The point is, I remember tweeting some snarky comment about, Brad Paisley, and one of the mayor's staff did not like that. They were like, he took his time to come play here. Like, you could take it seriously.
The city published the video, and then the mayor's office removed Brad Paisley's performance because he forgot the words to his song "Welcome to the Future."
Oh, wow. That must have been what I made a joke about.
Wow.
And then it was like, if the office provides written permission, Paisley's song will be replaced soon.
That is amazing.
Stephen, the other day we were talking about, there was a piece in Axios before the State of Metro that was remembering the 1993 State of Metro, which Bredesen gave, and sort of laid out a vision that has largely come to pass about the city and its growth. And, and I think next year you should do one about the 2013 Brad
An oral
Paisley.
History of Brad Paisley's performance at the State of Metro.
Yes.
Wow.
Who says no? Another one, you mentioned Dierks Bentley. I think I kind of irked some people I just got such a kick out of Dierks Bentley being on the airport authority because of his song Drunk on a Plane.
Yes.
Like, I'm just like, this is...
Every time it came up when he was appointed to the board and everything, that had to be mentioned.
Although, in that song, people will remember, he says, buying drinks for everybody but the pilot.
Okay.
So I think it's responsible. If you could argue that he's the perfect person to put on the airport authority. I don't think we have as much control over the airport authority as we used to anymore. So we can get to that later because I think the mayor talked about some of the state metro stuff. But let's get down to business. Enough of your nonsense. How was the speech yesterday? What are your just sort of initial takeaways? And we can talk about a few of the like topics that he addressed. But like, what was it like? This was at Nissan Stadium?
Yeah, it was at Nissan Stadium in the club. With the big windows that looks across the river at downtown. And it was there. I think at first I was a little surprised it was there, but there's only so many venues that can fit that many people.
That's another fun game we could do. Where have they had these? There's been Music City Center, the library.
And I think it has to be a metro facility. So I think Cooper had it at a high school one time. It was at the fairgrounds. So it was at Nissan Stadium, and they mentioned the first and last State of Metro at this Nissan Stadium because that will be demolished at some point in the relatively near future. I just need to bring this up because every time the demolition comes up, I sort of mourn the future loss of a ceremonial plunger push because it's so close to the other stadium. I think it'll have to be kind of a controlled segmented
they'll kind
demolition.
of just take it apart, not demolish it really, or not like implode it. It won't be an implosion.
I don't think they'll
do we know, is that confirmed?
No, I don't think so, but I think that's right.
Do you think you could do some reporting on that? Because that's a good point. Like they're building this new one, right? Although I will say I've seen some of those implosions where it's like one of these stadiums in a downtown of a city and they blow the thing up, so who knows.
It's also not I don't know if you can implode a structure that's sort of concave.
It might not fall in on itself. It might fall out.
Yeah.
Man,
okay. Anyway, it was at the Nissan Stadium. They were looking out over the downtown and part of the East Bank, and he mentioned some of this East Bank activity that's going on. There's going to be a groundbreaking in a few weeks for the affordable housing development that will be in the city-owned part of the development. That'll be kind of the first big groundbreaking on the city-owned part. So that was part of the speech, was about all the progress being made, the scrapyard, the TPAC relocation. So that was part of why I was there.
Yeah. One thing that we, you and one of our editors, Steve Cavendish, returned from the speech yesterday, and one of the things we all kind of were initially talking about was that it seemed to have some real he's running energy coming off of it, both in terms of just like comments he made about continuing to serve the city. You pointed out to me earlier that he used plural years instead of single year. There's been some uncertainty about whether he would run again, but it seems like he's going to now. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, he has had some hesitation to fully say that he's running for a second term next year in the past 6 months or so, and he's been asked about it. And, he has an account, like a campaign finance account. He's raised money. So, in effect, he is actively running. So all this is a little bit just words.
Right.
But yes, there were several moments in the speech that were looking to the future beyond just the next year that he has remaining in this term. And then afterwards, they kind of take questions from some media in a little scrum, and he was asked if he wants to serve another term, and he said, I do want to serve another term. And that was in pretty clear words, I thought. Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at one of the quotes you have here in your story about his speech. Because the other thing is you mentioned this, that he also was kind of touting some accomplishments, which every state of metro has a little bit of that. This is what we've done. But given that there's a re-elect coming up, there was seemingly some more emphasis on like, making it clear that his administration has done this. And there's this one quote where he said, "I've already tackled many of the challenges the city hadn't been able to solve for decades, problems that we've been talking about for years, opportunities that were started but never finished. We finally broke the cycle, taking challenges and turning them into accomplishments." And then he goes on to list some of these: transit, the scrapyard, healthier school start times, more housing. These are historic achievements, and we should celebrate them because we did them together. He gets into we at the end there. But on the one hand, that's like a pretty bold statement. I've already tackled many of the challenges the city hadn't been able to solve for decades. On the other hand, it's like not totally wrong, right? I mean, the transit referendum will, obviously that's not all. We're not living in that completed future yet, but that did pass. That was a big thing. Several mayors in a row have been trying to get some movement on a big transit project. The scrapyard, as we've talked about plenty, has every mayor in recent memory has wanted to get rid of that. What did you think about that part of his address?
Yeah, that line did stick out when I first read the draft of the script, I guess, of the speech as being particularly, what's the word? I think it was just notable for how much he was taking credit for this movement. And, on the transit front, I think that one is tough for them, I think, because it passed in 2024. The funding started coming in 6 months or so later. And now we are seeing some of these projects playing out, and bus times are, there's more frequent buses, but a lot of this stuff will take a decade to really play out. And so it's harder to take credit for it. I mean, yeah, you won the referendum, but in terms of pointing people to things where the money's going to, I think some of that stuff is longer term. So they're making a point both in this speech and then in appearances and other events around town. They're trying to really point out where different things are coming into place.
Well, there's also a weird thing like and this happens on national politics too, where, Joe Biden passes an infrastructure bill and then he's long gone, and then they're building something in your town and people who voted against the bill are showing up to celebrate it. But it's like at the local level, I do think that's an interesting kind of challenge where a lot of the stuff that many of us are very happy when we see it, when we come across it. Like if I'm at a bus stop that's particularly nice, or like I was at the North Nashville Transit Center a couple weeks ago, and I was like, this is really nice. Like this is a great facility. But it's like if you come out and give a speech and say, I'm going to build a very nice bus stop on this street, like everyone will just be like, what are you doing? It doesn't sound that exciting. We all like it once it's there. And as you're saying, this stuff is trickling out, slowly. So a lot of that just it can be frustrating because it's still hard to understand why some of it takes as long as it does. But some of it is just the logistics of it.
And another example of that is the East Bank, which was a focus of at least the setting at the speech. And I think it is kind of confusing maybe to some people because the stadium has gone up very quickly. They're nearing completion. And pretty much all of the other stuff that was discussed as part of this it really hasn't started and will take many years to unfold. And including TPAC, which he said in the speech, I think that groundbreaking could be next year, but it will take a couple years to build, I assume. And this affordable housing is just the first project in the Metro-owned development. So there's a long way to go on the East Bank, and that's been a big focus of this term, is getting all the pieces in place to do that, but you're not seeing the return, at least, you can't publish pictures and say, look what we built.
Right. I mean, we're already hearing about a Super Bowl taking place in that new stadium, and meanwhile, this other stuff has. I mean, do you have a sense of why that is? I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is just like, yes, the city has a large part financially and otherwise, like in that stadium and in that area, but there's also a big part of it that is just an NFL franchise that once they got the go ahead, they can just start going. Is that a big part of it, you think, or?
Yeah. I think well, in terms of the East Bank and why that's been, I guess, slow is the word some people would use.
Why it's at least lagging behind, like you said,
Yeah.
the clear progress on the stadium.
There's so many moving parts when you're building this whole neighborhood that is much larger than the footprint of the stadium.
You got to figure out a name for the thing.
There's several different names. I'm sticking with East Bank to the chagrin of some of the various representatives of these projects.
And now, how did you come up with that name? Is that because it's like a riverbank?
Well, don't give me credit for inventing the name East Bank. I think it's been called that for many years.
Because it's the east bank of the river? Is that where that comes from,
yeah,
I think? Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
They did try to rename one of the neighborhoods on the other side of the river South Bank. I don't know that that's sticking. On the East Bank, the city-owned Fallon development, where this affordable housing project will be and where several other things will be, is being called East Point. The scrapyard development, which is just across the street from that, is being called East Bend. It's just, and then there's East Bank, which is kind of the more generic term for it. It's sort of a Kleenex tissue thing, I guess. But I'm sticking.
It's going to be the new East Nashville, and then we're going to have to rename
Yeah.
Right.
the rest of the neighborhood.
I'm just going with East Bank. But anyway, there's really nothing there. Parking lots and a scrapyard, and so that means there's not really a road network. There are some roads, but not to the degree that you would need to have all this density. And
there's a lot more planning that is involved.
Infrastructure, underground infrastructure. You have to collaborate with the state because the state has some of the roads and is investing in TPAC and then in River North where Oracle is. There's just like a lot of moving parts because the Fallon project has city involvement. There's a lot more hurdles, I think, to get through than if it's just a private landowner building something. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's...
I'm to your point. We'll have the next 15 years. We can talk about that. We'll still be here doing this. Mm-hmm. The other thing I think, kind of broadly, if we're talking about sort of themes or sections of the mayor's speech, was like affordability. Right, there was talking about affordable housing, but also talking about the grocery tax. Break some of that down.
Yeah, one of the headlines I think from the speech was his plan to reduce the local portion of the grocery tax by 0.5 cent. So there's kind of a long history of that. The state used to have grocery tax holidays, and they don't anymore, but they did give local governments the opportunity to reduce their own portion of it. I think the local governments would prefer that the state do it so they don't lose the revenue, but
right.
Some local governments, I think Hendersonville was kind of first on the beat to this, but there's a weird quirk in the law where they allowed counties and cities to reduce their taxes, but didn't include metros. So then they had to go back and tweak it. But so yeah, they'll reduce it. 50 cents is just a portion of something that's, I think it's or 50, yeah, 0.5 cent. It's like 2 point something. So it's not the full tax. And he did say afterwards that they could consider further reductions in the future. The property tax rate is not changing in this budget. So reducing the grocery tax means, well, depending on what other revenue they're bringing in on sales tax and whatever else, it's sort of like you're bringing in less money than you did last year. So
right.
he said he's asking departments to make some cuts, tighten their belt. And then also on affordability, well, I guess the grocery tax, that figure is the same amount that was added for transit. So he's basically saying we asked tourists and commuters to pay a lot of these taxes that are going to transit. So now we're giving residents, basically that same amount back with this grocery tax cut, at least on groceries. And then on affordable housing, there's been a lot of pressure, not a lot of pressure, I guess, but there's been some advocacy from some different groups in town about using the city's financing capacity to pay for or help support affordable housing projects. And he did say that it's a little unclear, and I asked him afterwards for some more details, and he said they're still working through what that will look like, but they are going to do a pilot program to try to see how it would work to have a bond that could support affordable housing. And then the state of Metro is sort of technically the mayor's speech to introduce his budget proposal for the year. We don't actually have that budget yet. It's due on May 1st. As we record this, that's tomorrow, but by the time you listen to this, it might be out there. So we'll have some more details on exactly where money is going and how much he's investing in affordable housing. I think the Barnes Fund was one of the big asks from some of those groups too.
Do you anticipate, or have you heard anything that makes you think there will be debate about the grocery tax thing? And the reason I ask is, it's interesting. It's like, on the one hand, you might imagine that a lot of residents would be like, well, great. Like, groceries have been, there's still been some stubborn inflation and gas prices are high. And if you're going to give me a slight discount, at the grocery store, that's great. On the other hand, it comes with the mayor, having to ask Metro departments to tighten their budgets. And I'm just wondering if there are going to be some people who say, is this trade-off worth it if we're actually just having to cut into Metro services or some of Metro departments' functions to give a tax cut that is not to minimize it, but it is small. I mean, it's not like it's a huge amount of money.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that reminds me of the debate from recent months about this water bill credit, which was similarly kind of a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things. And the council ended up rejecting that, I think, for a number of reasons. But it was presented in a similar way by the mayor's office as like, here's an opportunity for us to put money back in people's pockets. And the council kind of said, this isn't the best way to do that. So I think the politics of it would be interesting, not at risk of wading into punditry. But grocery tax cut, I imagine, would be fairly popular, or at least it would be a bad look for council members to rail against it. We'll see.
Well, and the thing about grocery taxes is that, when you're talking about like property taxes, for instance, that's people who own property. Or if you're talking about a lot of the taxes that affect certain people more, grocery tax, we're all buying groceries. Lower income folks are having to buy groceries. Anyone in the city is going to the grocery store and getting food. So it's a kind of more universal thing, I suppose. Yeah.
And they're usually able to find like secret little pots of money in the budget, which is always kind of fun to watch. A bit murky, but the council now will take up the budget the next couple months.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, like, what happens next? This will now move to the council, right?
Yeah, I guess the revenue that is not going to be coming in from the grocery tax, I think, is around $9 million. So in the grand scheme of a $3 or $4 billion budget, it's not a huge amount. And they can usually kind of like find stuff in the couch cushion, so to speak. Usually that just means like different reserve funds are getting pilfered. But so the council takes over now. They have until the end of the fiscal year, the end of June, to pass their own budget. They could rewrite it from scratch, but that's not what happens. Usually they take the mayor's proposal, they tweak a few things here or there. They could change the tax rate. They could maybe add another percentage pay increase for employees, but they could fund a program that some community group is asking for, earmarks, I guess, in a way. But the process is messy because there's 40 council members. So usually the budget chair, Quante Toombs, this year leads that process, holds hearings, collects information from the council members about what they want to see in or out. And then people will file amendments and they'll go through it. And basically what happens usually is the budget chair collects all this information and makes a few tweaks, not wholesale changes usually to the budget, but a little stuff around the edge. And then that usually passes. But if it doesn't pass, and if the council does not pass a budget, then the mayor's original proposal just goes into effect.
Got it. So the last thing I wanted to touch on from the speech anyway is, I know there was some discussion of these various areas where the state has been either taking control from Metro or trying to. What were some of the things that the mayor said about that?
Yeah, and he also mentioned federal government. So both, from the federal perspective, a lot of it is about federal funding that's been lost in the past year and a half. But also he mentioned the immigration enforcement in the past year or so here in Nashville, and different presidential actions that the city has challenged in court. And in terms of the state, he did mention airport takeover, which I don't know if we need to get into all the details of that, but the state took over the airport board a couple years ago, and then the city challenged it in court and said you can't just target us. That's still pending, but the state just went ahead and took over all the major city airport boards, so it's not a targeted thing. So it looks like that's going to happen. There was also a bill that would have changed when Metro elections happened that did not end up going forward, but he did mention that too. And there were a few other things. There's a new law that sort of takes some control over the tourist district downtown and gives it to the state. So that was another one that he brought up. And he did say, there's a lot of stuff that I would like to do as mayor that I can't do because state law precludes it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, no doubt we'll get together again to talk about some of that and be following. We are, as always, a production of the Nashville Banner and produced by Andrea Tudhope, who has never sung a song at the State of Metro before, but maybe will someday in the future. We'll see you guys soon.